Imagine waking up on a normal morning. The alarm rings. The sunlight slips quietly through the window. The world outside moves exactly the way it always has. Cars pass by. Phones buzz. People start their routines without a second thought. At first, nothing feels different. But far beyond the clouds, beyond the blue sky, beyond what the human eye can see, something powerful is unfolding in the cosmos. On March 14th, a rare alignment occurs. The fiery planet Mars moves into direct contact with what astrologers call the node of destiny, a mysterious point in the sky believed to represent direction, purpose, and the future path of human lives. To most people, it will look like just another day on the calendar. But astrologers have watched patterns like this for centuries, and they say moments like this often mark turning points. Not always loud ones, not always dramatic ones. Sometimes the biggest changes in life begin quietly, with a feeling, a thought you can't ignore, a decision that suddenly feels unavoidable. Because this alignment doesn't just symbolize movement in the heavens, it symbolizes movement inside people. When Mars activates the node of destiny, something unusual can happen. Energy shifts, motivation rises. People begin questioning things they once accepted without hesitation. Suddenly, a job that once felt secure starts to feel limiting. A relationship that once felt comfortable begins to feel uncertain. A dream that once felt impossible suddenly feels worth chasing. And the strange part is that most people won't understand why these feelings appear. They'll just feel a quiet pressure building inside them, a sense that something is changing, something moving, something pushing them forward. Some people will ignore that feeling. They'll tell themselves it's just imagination, just another random thought. But others will feel it more strongly. A whisper inside the mind that grows louder with time. A voice that says, it's time for something different. Because when Mars, the planet of action, courage, and movement, touches the node of destiny, the universe creates a moment of momentum. A moment where hesitation fades. A moment where choices begin to matter more than ever. And sometimes, those choices lead people to places they never expected. New opportunities, new challenges, new beginnings. So if lately you felt like something in your life is about to shift, like you're standing at the edge of a decision you can't fully explain, this moment in the cosmos might be part of the reason. Because sometimes the universe doesn't send obvious signs. Sometimes it simply creates the perfect moment for you to choose your next path. Mars is not a quiet planet. It never has been. Among all the planets that astrologers study, Mars carries one of the most intense and unmistakable energies. It is the planet of movement, courage, fire, and raw determination. Wherever Mars appears in astrology, something begins to stir. Something begins to move. In ancient mythology, Mars was known as the god of war. The Romans believed Mars represented strength, bravery, and the willingness to fight for what matters. To them, Mars symbolized the warrior spirit, the force that pushes someone to stand up, take action, and move forward even when the path ahead is uncertain. And that idea still exists today in astrology. Mars represents the energy inside every human being that refuses to stay stuck. It is the spark that appears when patience runs out. It is the fire that grows when someone decides they are ready for change. Because there are moments in life when people stop waiting. Moments when something inside them suddenly shifts. And in those moments, hesitation disappears. Think about times in your life when you suddenly felt a surge of determination. Maybe there was a moment when you finally decided to leave something behind that had been holding you back for years. Maybe it was a job that no longer made you happy. Maybe it was a relationship that felt wrong. Maybe it was a dream you had been too afraid to chase. And then suddenly, something changed. The fear was still there. The uncertainty was still there. But a stronger feeling appeared. The feeling that you had to act. That sudden surge of courage, that inner push forward, is exactly what astrologers describe as Mars energy. Mars does not wait for perfect conditions. Mars does not ask for permission. Mars acts. It represents ambition, drive, and the instinct to move towards something new. It fuels motivation, competition, and the willingness to take risks when others might hesitate. And that is why Mars is often connected with major turning points in people's lives. Because action is what creates change. Without action, dreams stay dreams. Without action, opportunities pass by unnoticed. Without action, people remain exactly where they are. But Mars introduces movement, and movement changes everything. Throughout history, astrologers have noticed something fascinating. When Mars becomes strongly activated in the sky, people around the world often begin making bold decisions. Some people start new businesses. Some people move to new cities. Some people end old chapters and begin entirely new ones. It's as if Mars awakens a deep instinct inside people. The instinct to move forward instead of standing still. Of course, Mars energy can feel intense. It can bring urgency. It can bring impatience. Sometimes it even creates conflict, because Mars refuses to tolerate situations that feel stagnant or limiting. But at its core, Mars is not about destruction. Mars is about momentum. It is the energy that pushes people out of comfort zones and toward growth. Imagine standing at the edge of a new opportunity. Your mind begins listing all the reasons why it might not work. All the risks, all the unknowns. But somewhere deeper inside you, another voice speaks. A quieter voice, a stronger voice, it says, "Go for it." That voice is the spirit of Mars. It is the force that encourages people to try, to explore, and to move forward even when they cannot see the entire path ahead. And that energy becomes especially powerful during certain cosmic alignments. Because sometimes Mars acts alone, but other times, Mars connects with something much bigger, something more mysterious. And that's exactly what happens on March 14th. On this date, Mars forms a rare alignment with what astrologers call the node of destiny. If Mars represents action, courage, and movement, the node of destiny represents direction, purpose, the path your life may be moving toward. When these two forces meet, astrologers believe something remarkable can happen. The courage to act meets the pull of destiny. In other words, the moment when someone finally decides to move forward might also be the moment that leads them closer to the life they were meant to live. This is why astrologers pay close attention to Mars when it touches powerful points in the sky. Because it doesn't just represent energy, it represents decisions. And sometimes a single decision can change everything. A conversation you decide to have, a risk you finally decide to take, a door you finally decide to open. In the moment, these actions can seem small, but later when you look back, you realize they marked the beginning of an entirely new chapter. Mars energy is often responsible for those moments. It removes hesitation. It replaces doubt with movement. And it reminds people that progress only begins when someone is willing to take the first step. So, as March 14th approaches, astrologers believe that Mars will amplify something powerful within many people. A growing sense that it's time to act. A feeling that waiting is no longer the right option. A realization that the next step, whatever it may be, is finally ready to be taken. And when Mars meets the node of destiny, that next step may not just be another random decision. It might be the moment that quietly sets the course for everything that follows. Now here's where things start to get truly interesting. Because when astrologers talk about the node of destiny, they are not talking about a planet you can easily see shining in the night sky. It's not like Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn. You can't point to it with a telescope and say, there it is. The node of destiny is something different. It's what astrologers call a cosmic point, a place in the sky where powerful celestial paths intersect. Even though it isn't a physical planet, many astrologers believe it represents something incredibly meaningful in the story of human life. They associate it with direction, with purpose, with the invisible path your life slowly moves toward over time. In astrology, this point is often connected with the idea of destiny, not in a rigid or predetermined way, but in the sense that life constantly presents opportunities that guide you toward growth, experience, and transformation. Think of it like standing at a crossroads. Two roads stretch out in front of you. One road leads toward the familiar, the life you already know, the patterns you've grown used to, the comfort of what feels safe and predictable. The other road leads toward something unknown, something that requires courage, something that asks you to step forward without having every answer. That crossroads is what astrologers mean when they describe the node of destiny. It symbolizes those moments in life when you feel like the universe is quietly asking you a question. A simple but powerful question. Will you move toward the life meant for you, or remain where you are? Most of the time, these crossroads moments appear gently. They don't always arrive with dramatic announcements or obvious signs. Instead, they show up as subtle shifts. A new opportunity appears. An unexpected conversation opens your mind to a possibility you never considered before. An idea begins to grow quietly in your thoughts. You start wondering if the life you're living right now is truly the one you want. At first, the feeling might be small, almost easy to ignore, but over time, it grows stronger. You start noticing signs, patterns, moments that seem to guide you in a certain direction. And that's how the node of destiny often works. It doesn't force anything. It simply presents choices. But those choices can quietly shape the future. Because every life-changing journey begins with a decision, a single step in a new direction, a moment where someone decides to try something different. Now here's where the energy of March 14th becomes especially fascinating. Normally, the influence of the node of destiny can feel subtle. It whispers rather than shouts. It nudges people toward their path without creating sudden chaos. But when Mars enters the picture, the dynamic changes. Mars is the planet of action, courage, and movement. It doesn't whisper, it pushes. So when Mars aligns with the node of destiny, astrologers believe something powerful can happen. The quiet crossroads suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. Situations begin to move faster. Opportunities appear that didn't exist before. Conversations happen that change the way someone sees their future. Sometimes doors close unexpectedly. Other times, completely new doors open. And people often describe feeling like life suddenly accelerates. Events unfold more quickly. Choices become more urgent. Moments appear where hesitation no longer feels like an option. It can almost feel as if the universe is gently but firmly guiding people toward a turning point. But this isn't about chaos. It's about direction. The node of destiny doesn't create random disruption. Instead, it highlights the paths that may lead to growth, discovery, and transformation. Imagine standing in front of several doors. For years, you might walk past them without thinking, but suddenly, one door catches your attention. Something about it feels different. You feel curious, maybe even a little nervous, but you also feel drawn toward it. That moment of curiosity is often how destiny begins. And when Mars activates the node, that curiosity can quickly turn into action. People begin to follow instincts they might have ignored before. They take steps that once felt too risky. They move toward possibilities that once seemed far away. And later, when they look back, they often realize that a single moment, a conversation, a decision, a chance encounter, started everything. That is why astrologers sometimes call the node of destiny the cosmic crossroad, because it represents the point where the past meets the future, where comfort meets courage, where the familiar meets the unknown. And on March 14th, as Mars aligns with this mysterious point in the sky, many believe the energy of action will combine with the pull of destiny, creating a moment where life begins to move in a new direction, not randomly, not by accident, but with a sense of purpose, because the node of destiny does not exist to create confusion. It exists to create direction. Here's the part most people don't talk about. When Mars meets the node of destiny, something subtle but powerful tends to appear in people's lives. A decision. Not always a huge, dramatic decision that shakes the world in a single moment. Sometimes it looks small. Sometimes it looks so ordinary that you almost overlook it. It might be a message you finally decide to send after thinking about it for weeks, or even months. A phone call you finally gather the courage to make. An opportunity you finally decide to say yes to. Or a situation where you quietly decide that something in your life can't stay the same anymore. In the moment, these choices may seem simple, almost insignificant, just another small action in an ordinary day. But later, when you look back at your life, you realize something surprising. That small decision was actually the beginning of everything that came next. History is filled with moments like this. Moments that looked tiny at first, but eventually changed the course of entire lives. A person decides to take a job in a different city. Another person decides to speak to someone they've never met before. Someone else decides to follow an idea that others thought was unrealistic. At the time, none of these decisions seemed world-changing. But step by step, those choices created new paths, new opportunities, and new futures. Life rarely changes all at once. Most of the time, transformation begins with a single step, a single moment of courage, a single decision to move forward instead of standing still. And that is the energy astrologers associate with the alignment happening on March 14th. Because when Mars connects with the node of destiny, the universe seems to create moments where decisions suddenly feel more important, more urgent, more meaningful. People begin to notice crossroads appearing in their lives, situations where they have a choice: stay where they are, or move toward something new. For some people, the comfortable option will feel safer, and there's nothing wrong with that. Staying with the familiar can feel stable, predictable, secure. So many people will choose to continue living exactly the way they always have. They will ignore the subtle feeling that something different might be possible. They will push aside the thought that maybe life is offering them a new direction, and their lives will continue moving along the same path, but others will experience something different, a strange pull they can't quite explain, a quiet voice inside their mind that keeps returning to the same thought again and again, a sense that something in their life is about to change, even if they can't fully see what that change will look like yet. It's a feeling many people describe as standing at the edge of something unknown, exciting, but also slightly intimidating, because every meaningful decision carries a certain level of uncertainty. You can't see the full outcome. You can't predict exactly what will happen. All you know is that something inside you is telling you to take a step forward, and that's where courage enters the story. Because courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. Courage simply means choosing to move forward despite the uncertainty. That is the type of energy Mars brings. Mars pushes people to act, to take initiative, to trust their instincts. And when that energy meets the node of destiny, those instincts can start pointing toward life-changing directions. Sometimes the signal is quiet at first, a thought, an idea, a possibility that appears unexpectedly. But as time passes, the signal becomes stronger, harder to ignore, until eventually the moment arrives where you must choose, move forward, or remain where you are. And the people who decide to move forward often discover something incredible. The path they step onto begins revealing opportunities they never imagined. New experiences appear. New people enter their lives. New chapters begin to unfold, all because of a single decision. That is why moments like the one happening on March 14th capture so much attention in astrology, because they symbolize a powerful combination: the courage to act and the direction of destiny. When those two forces align, life can begin shifting in ways that feel almost guided, almost intentional, as if the universe is quietly placing an opportunity in front of you and asking one simple question: are you ready to take the next step? And while destiny rarely announces itself loudly, when Mars activates it, the signal can become impossible to ignore. Let me ask you something. Have you recently felt like something in your life is about to change? Not in an obvious way, but in a quiet, almost mysterious way. Like you're standing at the edge of a new chapter. You can't fully see what's ahead yet, but deep down you feel that something is shifting. Something inside you feels restless, curious, or even slightly uncomfortable with staying exactly where you are. That feeling might not be random. Throughout history, many people have described moments like this right before a major turning point in their lives. A strange sense that the future is slowly approaching, even before any visible changes appear. Astrologers often associate these feelings with powerful cosmic alignments, moments when the energy of action and direction come together. The Mars node alignment on March 14th is believed to be one of those moments, not because the universe forces anything to happen, but because it can create the perfect window of opportunity. A moment where courage matters a little more than usual. A moment where hesitation starts to fade. A moment where the next step you take could quietly shape the direction of your future. Sometimes these moments arrive disguised as simple choices. A conversation that changes the way you see things. An idea that suddenly feels impossible to ignore. An opportunity that appears when you least expect it. At first, you might question it. You might wonder if you're ready. But deep inside, there's often a feeling that this moment means something, that it's asking you to move forward instead of staying where you are. So if lately you felt like life is gently pushing you towards something new, pay attention. Because moments like these don't always last forever. And sometimes the universe presents a simple question at exactly the right time. Are you ready to step onto the path that was always waiting for you? The alignment of Mars and the node of destiny is not something that happens every day. In fact, moments like this are rare. But when they do appear, many people begin to notice something unusual. Life seems to move a little faster. Situations that once felt stuck suddenly begin to shift. New paths appear where there were none before. At the same time, some old doors quietly begin to close, not as a punishment, but as a sign that certain chapters are reaching their natural ending. Because sometimes, before a new path can open, the old one has to fade away. And the people who pay attention during moments like these often discover something surprising. The opportunity they were waiting for, the change they were hoping for, the direction they were searching for, was closer than they ever realized. So as March 14th approaches, stay aware. Watch the moments that stand out. Listen to the ideas and opportunities that suddenly appear. Because sometimes destiny doesn't arrive with loud announcements. Sometimes it appears quietly, in the form of a simple decision. And when that moment arrives, don't ignore it. Because your next big step, and perhaps the beginning of your next chapter, might already be on its way.